Hi and welcome to the Borealis show. Today with Sarah and Cody, and we will be talking about yoga, well-being, and immigration. So, yeah, just give us a start.
So my name is Cody. I know Sarah and Aurora both through yoga. So I thought today we would get into yoga a little bit. Sarah is my yoga instructor, and I've done yoga with other people, but I mostly do it with her now. And Sarah's also my partner. We are together and we do a lot of yoga. It's really become like a fairly main thing in my life in the last couple of years, and I think it's really beneficial, and I'm really interested to just have a conversation about that a little bit. But before yoga, what did you do, Sarah?
You mean for work?
Work-wise, yeah.
Well, I did my bachelor's degree in health science, and I was a full-time musculoskeletal therapist. Essentially, it's like a massage therapist that focuses a little bit more on, long-term health and prevention rather than just a quick fix. It's like trying to work with people and where they're at with their bodies and trying to create a lifestyle which will prevent further pain rather than necessarily heal it, but it's prevention. It's better than cure. Yeah.
All right. And have you always been interested in health, the health industry?
For the most part, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aurora,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. You used to work in the health industry also.
Yes, I
What
did.
did you do?
I learned physiotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a physiotherapist in Germany for 5 years, 8 years included with the schooling. And yeah, I was always a sporty kid, always interested in health and wellness, and physiotherapy was just perfect combo of everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, yoga I just started recently.
How long have you been doing yoga?
Since February only.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're fairly new to the yoga world.
Yeah, I was way too restless beforehand. I was in a different state.
So, had you been aware of yoga for a long time previous to practicing?
Yes, I always thought it's very ego-driven girls who do that, and it has to be painful, like staying in painful positions for a long time, and that's what I thought yoga was.
All right. Before you, I know your backstory a little bit. So before you started practicing yoga, were you really like aware of yoga? What did it like? Was it in your view at all?
No, so before I started actually practicing yoga and then teaching yoga, I just sort of saw yoga as a complementary form of physical exercise, like stretching essentially, but it wasn't until I started practicing more full time, and it wasn't just in complementary to my other workouts, that it started to actually become my main sort of focus, that I realized there was a much deeper level than just stretching. Yeah.
It is definitely more than stretching, but it still is stretching.
Yeah, it is.
Still feels good.
That's obviously an element of it, but it's not. It's not the be all and the end all, right? Aurora?
That's right, yeah.
So you said you were a sporty kid.
Yeah.
You participated in sports quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a relationship with stretching?
Never. And like stretching was always like something you would like to avoid, even if the trainer was saying do this after a tournament, then no, it was always a pain.
What about breathing?
Breathing, no, not aware.
Not
like,
aware.
No, it
Did
just
your like sports coaches ever talk to you about like recovery breathing and?
No, nothing.
And Sarah, what about you? Did you have a relationship with stretching and like?
Stretching, yes, absolutely, and especially with my training, my education. It was very much like, and it would be somewhat similar to what you would have done with physiotherapy, in like home prescription, like you know, you're always prescribing people like stretches to go along with like what's going on in their body, but the connection that I had with the effects of like a yoga practice in compared to just like stretching is very different. Like there's more of a connection between the breathing element and the physical body, whereas when you're sort of stretching, like there's less emphasis, I think, on the breath with the relationship with it, right?
For sure. I definitely feel like a lot of people, their perception is just that yoga is stretching. I know, so I played a lot of sports as a kid. I was very active, very involved in lots of team sports, and I think in football it was definitely like a whole like at the beginning of practice the team stretches together and you do these like stretches, and you kind of have like, especially before games, you have, it's almost like a little ritual. You all line up and you face each other and you do these stretches and you clap and you kind of like have this like pre-game thing. And I always liked stretching, and also in sports I did have coaches that talked to us about breathing. You know, like especially like football is really fast, really intense, and then you have a break. And in that break, we're supposed to try to like catch our breath, settle your nerves down, and recover. And I learned fairly young, like, oh, breathing's really cool. You can control your heart. You can control all these things. You can settle yourself down. So I always liked breathing, and I liked stretching. But when I began practicing yoga and kind of put the two together, it definitely took on a different form. And I think it's really been beneficial in my life to kind of like put those two things together. Sarah, in your yoga studio, I know that you definitely put a lot of emphasis on the breath. Do you feel that's something that is often missed out in people's idea of yoga and in the practice of yoga itself?
Depends. It really depends on the demographic, I think, as well, that you're teaching, because when you're integrating breath with movement, it's really hard in the beginning. Like when you've, like if you've, like, try to think back to the first time you ever practiced yoga, and not only are you trying to figure out the movements, like which poses you're coming into, but then try to synchronize that with breath. That's really hard. And so I think like depending on the class demographic, the teachers will focus less on synchronizing that the exact breath with the movement, depending on who's in the class. But eventually, like, I think like the breath is such a true essence to the yoga practice. If there is no connection back to the breath, then it's not really yoga anymore. You know, like it's that's a different. But like I can understand how in some classes maybe it's not as strongly like reinforced, because to make it less full on for the participants essentially.
Okay.
So it's not so overwhelming.
Okay, so would you, I mean, we don't want to pick apart and like criticize different types of practices, but often in like a flow practice, it's faster. You're not necessarily moving each breath with each movement. Like it sometimes seems to me that in a lot of the flow classes, it's like half breaths. And on like a half breath, you're moving and your heart rate's getting up a little more and you're maybe sweating more. And there's the benefit of like the exercise side of it. But I don't know if like personally I enjoy that for like the meditative sense.
Well, but you start to change the rate of your breath to the rhythm of the practice.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
What's the difference between yoga and like exercise? Do you feel there is a difference? Is yoga just exercise?
It's a form of physical activity. It depends. It's really a personal, like for you, because for some people it is just a form of exercise, and that's all that it is to them, and that's what they get out of that, of their practice. For some people it's something much deeper. Maybe it's a feeling of self-empowerment. Maybe it's a more spiritual sort of an experience. But for other people it's very much a physical thing. It's very much, you know, for some people it's a little bit of both. Like I think it's such a perspective thing.
Aurora, do you, like, from playing sports as a kid, what's your opinion? Like, is yoga just sport? Is it just another activity? Or does it have a deeper dimension?
Oh, it definitely has a very deep dimension. Like when we talk about spirituality and like connecting to the mind and the soul even, like the body. But for me, it's not so much exercising, because I find, like, for me, exercising is sweating and having the heart rate really high. And I know in yoga you can bring the heartbeat up, but not so much. Like, for me, it's more endurance sport that I would call exercising. Maybe at the gym too, but it's a sport, I would say.
Yoga is one of those things too, though, and I remember one of my yoga teachers saying this to me, whereas yoga complements everything else really well, but other sports don't necessarily complement yoga really well. And it's just in a sense...
What do you mean?
Well, like,
how's that?
In my personal experience, I found when I started practicing yoga, or like before I started practicing yoga, I was right into CrossFit, I was right into running, and running, for example, let's use that. Yoga helped me regulate my breath better, helped me sort of get into a rhythm, a pace with the way I was running and my breath. Whereas, is when I was running a lot as well as practicing, I found that my practice was more challenging physically. Not that I'm saying that it didn't benefit my yoga practice, but it didn't allow me to go as deep, so I guess that's a little bit of a...
It just kind of like affects your muscles, tightens things up a lot.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's drawing awareness to like imbalances and such in your body, but and then also as well, it just gave me a better perspective of my body in space and alignment, like how to move my body and how to engage my body properly. And then when I went back and started doing gym work, I was like, oh, that's just like in yoga, right? It's like
it definitely, like, so many sports are based on alignment and positioning. Like when you break things down to fundamentals, that's generally what it is like good body stack, good like awareness of where you are to move yourself around in that space. And yoga definitely teaches you all about your body and where you are and knowing where you are and being able to, one of the coolest things is like being able to isolate different parts. And like we talk about an inside rotation on like the lower part of your leg and an external rotation on the top part of your leg, to be able to like mentally make that connection to your leg and to select those muscles, turn them this way, select those muscles, turn them this way. That really is quite a cool thing. With a lot of sports you don't think about the
yoga to lose
standing.
Some knee issues this summer. I started running quite a bit and started trying to do some Spartan races and stuff, and I had not been running, and then I just started running really hard on the trails and kind of injured my knee, and I went to a physiotherapist, and I've recently gone to the doctor, and the physiotherapist gave me stretches to do, and I did some of them sometimes. I go to the gym twice a day. I have time to like do these exercises. Not that I have time, I make time for fitness, but even like someone who's really conscious of their body, I don't always do like the things that I'm told to do.
Self-discipline is hard.
Yeah, it's the hardest. It's the hardest.
It's like an ongoing thing.
It is. It is definitely self-discipline, and that's like responsibility, right? So that's self-discipline. All right, how do you feel, both of you, coming from other countries? You're from Germany. That's where you grew up. Have you lived in France as well? Or any significant time?
You did, but not me.
And you're from Australia? What do you think of the Canadian medical system? Have you been to the doctor quite a bit?
Well, I moved here because of my grandparents, so they had to go to the doctors quite a bit in the recent years, and it's very different to what I'm used to.
In what sense?
In Germany, the waiting lists.
That's, I'd say, one of the worst things about the Canadian system is the waiting. It's
incredible. Like, you have 34 million people in this huge country, and there's waiting lists like 6 months for an X-ray or something, and I just think, wow, until then the bone is probably healed again. And so the waiting list, and then prescribing stuff and just fix it with a
Do you
pill.
think Canadian doctors overprescribe? Like they give
That would be-
prescriptions too easily?
Well, even if you go to Shoppers, you have like right away this little antibiotic cream or antibiotic pill that you can take if you have a minor thing, and I would tend to say that they prescribe way too much and too
liberal.
fast, and they don't help people to help themselves or to find more natural remedies.
Do you think is that a difference between Canada and Germany? Do you think the medical system in Germany is as liberal in prescribing prescriptions?
No, and I mean we have way more people in a very small country, and that's why it's I don't know, the pace, and I don't know where I was going with that. But people are way more critical there with what they put into their body and how they want to fix themselves or get fixed. And here it's like the complete trust, and with 40 I'm gonna get a new hip prosthesis, or how do you say?
Process? Prosthetics.
Prosthetics. And in Germany you don't get it before the age of 60, because after 10 years you have to change it again. And here you have a young person with 40. Do it just twice, you will have to do it again. And so much money.
Sarah, what about you? What do you think? Do you notice a difference between the healthcare systems?
Well, I guess what I've needed to seek doctors for, not too much. Like, I would agree they prescribe really willy-nilly, but they kind of do that in Australia as well. But like it's similar in that sense. There's a lot of things that are about Australia that I think they're fairly similar with Canada. It's pretty much for muchness.
We've discussed this a little bit before, just the tendency for our system to treat the symptom rather than the cause. Do you, in your education and your current work, trying to work with fixing and healing bodies, my knee hurts, let's make the pain go in the knee, but where is that pain coming from? Do you think that is addressed better by Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, or is there any difference?
Well, I think my education, I did my degree in a holistic health college, so it was very it was advocating alternative medicine, but in all of our training it was also very made clear that alternative medicine is working in conjunction with your Western medical doctors. So I wouldn't go replacing my a regular doctor with alternative medicine, but in saying that, I think that you shouldn't believe everything that your doctor tells you, and if you feel like there's something wrong in your body,
can't believe your doctor, who can you believe?
I think doctors are human, everyone's human, and I think if you know there's something going on in your body, seek several different opinions, and if you're getting the same opinions from doctors that are just giving you the same prescriptions that you feel are not helping, then seek alternative ways, and you may be surprised by the results that you get. But that's my opinion. I think they both can work in conjunction with each other. Whether or not one is better than another, that's just like saying, different therapies are going to work better with different people, and that just
there's no one cure-all for magic solve everything.
No.
I will just, for the people who just tuned in, I would just say, welcome again to the Borealis show. Today with Cody and Sarah, and we're talking about yoga and the health system, and later on about immigration. Cody is one of my warriors I picked for the Warriors Among Us episodes, and we're having a really nice conversation here. You can find us on the Facebook live stream, or you can download the app on your Android and iPhone, the Jazz FM app. Thank you very much. Sorry.
No problem. All right, let's shift gears here a little bit. So I have a history degree. That's not what I do, but that's I think my passion. I grew up in southern Alberta. Well, no, I grew up in Saskatchewan. Moved to southern Alberta when I was 15. Rural Canada is my upbringing. Pretty sheltered, pretty low-key, unexciting. But I lived in France for a couple of years, and that opened my eyes to the fact that the world is so much bigger, and statues. There's a statue in Strasbourg of Gutenberg with his movable type press, and I used to walk by that statue all the time, and that just, I don't know, it did something to me. It really made me think a lot. It was such an important time in history when the Protestant Reformation was going on. The printing press came out, and the Bible was printed in German first and then in other languages. That just changed society. Today we have the internet. It is the second wave of technological advancement to the printing press. The printing press allowed the distribution of ideas to spread rapidly. How many people can read? Lots. But how many people can listen? Everybody. So with the internet,
Not everybody.
nearly.
They can hear, but they don't listen.
Okay.
You got it.
So we have this new media revolution, which is the internet, and podcasting, radio, all these things are starting to really be a lot more accessible to a lot more people. And I think that's really, really cool. I'm really excited to be on this show. I had a radio show before. I thought that was really neat. Sorry, I kind of got off topic there, but to go back,
Immigration.
yeah, immigration. So I fell in love with Europe when I was there. That's what I was getting to. You're from Germany. How long have you been in Canada?
4 years.
4 years. What initially brought you to Canada?
Huge heartbreak.
Heartbreak.
Yes, a horrible heartbreak. Yeah, I moved to South Africa first for my boyfriend.
I didn't know that. South Africa. Whereabouts?
Yeah, and Johannesburg. Yeah, I lived there for 4 months. And yeah, it didn't work out. And then it was not pride, but I just decided not to go back to Germany. I wanted to discover something new, and so I traveled in the US for quite a while, and then I knew the health system is even worse down there than here. And my grandparents had this gorgeous little cottage, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna give Canada a try. And so 2014 I moved to Lethbridge and went back to school, to the college here, and
Cool. So have you primarily been in Lethbridge in your time in Canada? Or
so
the
when
Lethbridge area?
before I moved here, you mean?
Just in your time that you've been in Canada, has most of it been in Lethbridge?
Oh yeah. Beaver mines and Canada.
And how long have you been here?
Nearly 7 years.
Nearly 7 years.
Off and on.
Off and on.
Majority though.
Why did you first come here?
I don't want to say heartbreak, but it kind of fueled it. I came because I'd always wanted to travel, and then our relationship had ended, so it was like, well, why not, right? Just being young and...
Was it for the stereotypical image of the lumberjack Canadians who have big mustaches and are so manly?
I didn't even know that was the Canadian stereotype.
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't really know
idea.
much about Canada at all.
No.
I thought like log cabins and moose. That was about it. That's all I really knew. I had a friend that was traveling here, and it was easy for me to get a work permit. I was like, yeah, that seems like a fun place to go for a while.
So does Canada have an identity that you were aware of before moving here?
No.
No?
Not before I moved here, but I think it has an identity now. That like now that I've been here for a long time, I definitely feel that it does.
Where are you both at in your immigration process?
I'm currently waiting to get my permanent residency card, so 99% through. But it took 4 years. It was quite a pain. So don't you say like immigrants are flying in here with no processing at all.
And so are you in your process?
I am waiting on my permanent residency is being like processed. Like I don't know if it's been approved yet. So I'm waiting on it to be approved.
Had you, when you came here, did you always intend to get permanent residency?
Yeah.
Yes, you know. How do you respond to the word immigrant? Do you self-identify?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh, yeah.
I feel like a tolerated person here. Like I'm not. I feel like I belong, but there's a big part of me who believes no, I'm still not here. Like I can be sent back home.
Yeah.
I know I'm an immigrant, but I don't really feel like one. It's not something like I wake up in the morning and be like, yeah, I'm an immigrant. Like it's still something that I would like if I would say I'm an Australian, like living in Canada. But I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess I am an immigrant, but it's not something I really think about.
It's not something you really
associate
self-identify as.
No.
It's not part of your image.
No.
So you both have accents.
Do we?
Always stay that way. It's hard to get rid of.
If you could lose your accent, would you?
I don't, like it's people who tell me I have an accent, I don't really hear it anymore, so I wouldn't mind. Like if I lose it, I lose it. If I keep it, I keep it. It doesn't really, it doesn't give me disadvantages or advantages, I believe so.
Is it a conversation starter? People...
Well, at my job.
The guys trying to start talking to you and say, oh, I heard an accent.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Yeah.
I was recently in Australia visiting Sarah's family, and I thought it was really fun to have the accent, to be the person with an accent.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've traveled a fair amount. I've been the person with an accent before, but I do get a kick out of being the person with it. I do, but it's not where I'm living. It's just where I'm visiting. So you kind of feel like a rock star when you visit somewhere, especially if it's a small town and you have a funny accent and you go down to the liquor store and chat people up and where are you from? Like I enjoy that conversation and just how people seem when you're visiting another country. It seems to me like a lot of people are very friendly to you. They hear that you're from somewhere else and they want to ask you questions, and I'm curious like that, so I'm happy to answer those questions.
One thing that blows my mind is when I go back to Australia, and you know this, but people think that I have an accent in Australia. And then I come here and people think I have an accent. And it's like, I don't fit in anywhere.
Just an outcast.
I just got this little mixed breed, like.
You got a mutt accent.
A little bitter accent, yeah.
How do you guys feel about the border? You just crossed the border today, didn't you?
Yeah.
How was that experience going out and coming in?
Going out was, I'm always so super anxious. I feel like a super criminal.
You feel like a criminal?
Yeah, because, I don't know, I feel bad about myself. It's so strange. I feel not good because I know they will like try to...
Interrogate you.
Yeah, interrogate me, and it was the case when we drove into the States, and I had to get up. Like my friend is Canadian, so they just looked at his passport and here you go. Oh, this German, she has to come out. So I had to go inside, and then they ask you a bunch of questions, and of course you're nervous, and then they
play on that.
Yeah, sometimes they play on that. I mean, you have a pretty sweet or not so sweet experience with that. And, it's just stressful. And coming back, it was like super easy. And,
coming into Canada, it was super easy.
Yeah, it was very friendly.
You still had to get out of your car? And
No. Maybe it's because of Trudeau and Trump.
But you got a valid work permit though right now, right?
Oh, everything. For 2 years. But it's the US people who wanted to know what is your status in Canada. And the Canadians were like,
Well, yeah.
When's the last time you went to the States?
Me?
Yeah. Probably like 2 summers ago, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been over again since I had that funky experience crossing the border. But I find for the most part, like if I think there'll always be a little bit of anxiety until I get my permanent residency. Like when I first came to Canada, with the working holiday work permit, absolutely there was that anxiety, like not knowing if you were going to get in. And when you've travelled such a long way, they can, if just up to their discretion, if they don't want to let you in for whatever reason, they don't have to. And so you'd be back on a plane and it would, you know what I mean? Just there's a certain sense of vulnerability in that you don't really have a say.
Not in control.
No, even if you know that you haven't done anything wrong, you're not a criminal, but you kind
there's
of
that anxiety of
absolutely
not being in control.
Yeah, but going over the border to going home to Australia, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get in. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like not worried at all because like
I mean, I don't particularly like crossing the border either. Most of the time, it's not a problem. There has been several times when I cross that for some reason or another they think I'm gonna work. So if I go in a truck and there's tools in that truck, I'm gonna have a much tougher time than if I go in a car and I'm clean. They just will assume that I want to work down there and they'll bring me in and question me over that. Obviously, coming into Canada, as long as I don't have poultry or any of the stuff that's not allowed to bring across, it's super easy for me.
Yeah.
But
I think it's important to recognize though it plays its role. Like it definitely, if it was easy to cross the border, then maybe the country wouldn't be as sweet as it is. You know what I mean? Like the processes are there for a reason, and you have to respect that process. Yeah.
Definitely. I was going to ask, do you think borders are important?
Yes.
What do you think, Aurora?
Coming from Europe and knowing that I don't need a passport to go to Italy, Spain, and Portugal in one day is super sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy it.
Yeah. I remember when I was living in France, I took a bus and wasn't paying attention and ended up in Germany. Like a city bus, like Strasbourg is on the border, and I just wasn't paying attention, and you just ended up in another country on a city bus.
Well, and it's so different, no? Like different food, different everything.
Yeah.
Within an hour. So.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, though. They seem to have been, like Europe has seen it within the, what is it called, the Shenzhen? They've been quite successful at having open borders between those countries and relatively low problems with populations crossing over. Do you think there's any sense in having a U.S.-American border? Are we close enough to the same people that we can just cross over either way?
I don't understand the politics of both countries enough to be able to answer, but I think that if there is some type of a relationship between the countries that like Europe, for example, obviously had some type of agreement, some type of relationship that
in the European Union together.
Yeah, that it was like it made it accessible. But I feel like there would be some countries that share maybe like very different politics or very different cultures and lifestyles where it may be conflicting.
I've gone back and forth a little bit on borders and how important I think they are as far as keeping some people out and other people. It's certainly easy to say that we won birth lottery. We were all born in great countries. We all got to grow up in prosperity and really stable societies, and it's really doesn't seem fair to tell other people they can't come here. No, sorry, you got the shaft. You were born somewhere else that was less stable, and you can't come here because if too many of you come here, it will wreck what we have. But that kind of also at the same time is the reality of it. If a whole bunch of people flood in, it will disrupt the current situation of things. So borders are really quite an interesting thing, and I don't think it's like an easy answer. pros and cons on every side, and things are always changing.
Mm-hmm.
But I get into like, there seems to be a rise in nationalism in politics right now. And I just was wondering what your identity towards your nation is. What does like it mean to be German to you? Living in Canada, would you ever give up your German passport?
No. Well, we cannot have two passports. There's
So if you had to choose between
No.
Canada and Germany, would you?
I would stick to my German passport for sure.
Yeah.
If I can have the permanent residency here, but yeah.
So if you're living here in Canada, would you want to vote in Germany still?
No, it's not possible
It's
because
not
I have to have how do you say place to stay in Germany in order to vote. So
Residency.
a residency. Maybe it's total BS. I'm just telling you, and maybe from like soon on we can vote online as well. But for now, I think that I would have to have a home place in Germany in order to.
What about you, Sarah? Would you ever, if you had to choose between getting a Canadian passport and being a Canadian citizen, or keeping your Australian passport and being Australian, which do you think you would choose?
It's a big hypothetical because I don't have to choose either. Like both Australia and Canada are allowed to have both. So yeah,
Commonwealth,
yeah. So like, I don't really know. I will be honest. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to current politics.
So would you want to vote in Australian politics from Canada, not being a citizen?
I don't.
Or, sorry, not be still an Australian citizen. But.
I mean, I don't vote in Australia right now. Like, and in Australia, it's actually compulsory. Like, it's you have to vote. But because I've left the country and I'm not living in the country, I don't have to. But when you're living in Australia, it's compulsory. Like, you get fined if you don't vote.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, but in my opinion, if you're kind of ignorant and you don't know anything about politics, then your vote's kind of not really a valid vote, really, is it? Like, if you're voting just because a lot of people, I used to do this when I was like 19. I'd go in and vote and like, meh. I'd just do like a dummy vote. I had no idea what I was doing, and I think that I think there isn't enough education in Australia. Like, we didn't learn anything about politics in high school.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, that's why I'm so ignorant. Like, I know more about it now that I'm in Canada. Now that I most of my friends are very involved in politics. But other than that, like, I've been really unexposed. So.
Well, don't feel bad because I learned everything about it and I'm still ignorant. Give less.
Unless you're like right in it, it's very complicated.
Well,
I wish things weren't so complicated in a sense. Like, I understand that getting influence changes things when you're trying to like speak for large groups of people. Everything gets tricky, especially with the amount of money that's involved when people are buying votes. Like, who you represent and how you represent them it's a tricky thing. But I feel like more people are getting involved in politics. Part of it from social media. I feel like social media has put politics kind of in everyone's face, but at the same time, seeing how the American president used to be a game show host, politics has moved to kind of that arena almost, of being almost a farce. Especially, I'm sorry to say, like, American politics now seems like, I'm glad I'm not American, simply because I wouldn't have wanted to have voted in the last election. It was pretty rough. But in Canada, we have our own problems. It's easy to criticize the states and just like blow down on them when we have, plenty of problems up here that we need to take responsibility for ourselves. But I wanted to read you an interesting quote. In October 2015, Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, told the New York Times that Canada is becoming a new kind of country, not defined by our history or European national origins, but by a pan-cultural heritage. There is no core identity, no mainstream in Canada. Do you think that Canada has an identity? being from somewhere else, being someone who has come into Canada, is there a Canadian identity?
Would that be the same as stereotype, or what comes to mind when I think of Canada, or how can I think I don't understand the identity
So,
thing.
is there a stereotype? Sure, we'll start there. Okay, is the stereotype true?
Yeah. No. And I realized this when I moved here. Never before, because I visited my grandparents over 10 years here before I moved here. And it was always, oh yeah, like probably tree huggers and love nature, and nothing ever bad happened here, and we all love each other, and there's so many people from all over the world who live peacefully together. And then when I moved here, it was, quite different. Not only in a bad way, but
in a good way as well.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you feel there's a Canadian identity?
I do, to a certain extent, yeah. Like, I mean, just, like, the only thing that I really have to compare it to is what I believe is, like, an Australian identity. And, like, two countries that are, like, very similar in many ways are still very different in many ways. And I just, you know, it all depends on, like, the group of people you're around and, like, just the area. But I do believe that there is, like, I find the Canadians are generally, I think, kind, a little bit passive sometimes, and they're like, you know, like they come across as really kind. Maybe they don't always actually tell you exactly how they feel, but they're generally quite polite, and that is a stereotype, but I've seen it to be true for the most part.
So I want to bring this up because we've talked about this before, and I want to see if you agree. So when I lived in France, I felt like it took a little longer, maybe, to become friends with someone. People seemed to be a little bit colder on the beginning.
Yeah.
But once you became friends with someone, they really, like, treated you well.
Yeah.
They were very reliable and consistent on, like, how they treated you. And I feel like in Canadian culture, everyone is really nice to your face.
Yes.
When you're talking to everyone, they're your best friend when they're there. But as soon as you kind of, like, move away, you don't know if those people are really, like, your friends. If they're, like, we're really flaky, I think. We'll commit to a whole bunch of things and say, yeah, I'm going to show up to everything, and then not show up to any of it. Whereas I felt like a little more in France, if people would say no a little bit more. No, I'm not going to come to that. No, I'm not interested in doing that. And if they did say yes, they would be there. Whereas I think we're a little bit maybe too eager to please, and like don't want to ever like offend. We're almost afraid of conflict in the sense.
Confrontation. I
we
feel
don't
like
want any
lots of
conflict.
people.
Okay, we gotta.
Lots of people are afraid of confrontation.
Oh, and I would say Germany is like the very opposite.
Very
and
opposite.
That's why I sound a little jaded and negative when I say, well, I was like, Canada has always like been this green positive country, and then I moved here and it's been bad. But yeah, personally it was so painful to experience. Like, you want to make connection and you have this yes, talk to you later, blah blah blah, and then never follow up. And as a German, like when I tell you see you later, it means like in 2 hours I'm gonna stand in front of your door, and you probably meant like, yeah, I'm never gonna see you again. You know? So it was very painfully emotionally from that side, and it's a beautiful country, and I love the way. Like, there's a good side to the politeness and how friendly people are. That's not the case in Germany. Like, if you go to a restaurant, you are a nuisance to the waitress, right? Like, don't you dare ask for, I'm exaggerating now, but don't you dare ask for a little bit more salt or something. And it's very, the superficial way of interacting here is so soft and kind, and for the most part, and I really enjoyed that. But when it comes to making connection, then it's hard and unpredictable.
A little more removed.
Yeah.
I like this criticism. It's good. Well, I mean,
painful.
I mean, I'm incredibly guilty of that behavior myself.
Oh, really?
Oh, for sure.
Like when you met, was it
Us?
something?
Oh no. He came on pretty strong.
Good. I like that. That's why he's my warrior here, because he's different.
Well, I will shamefully say that for a long time I'm very guilty of. I think I was raised well. I think I come from a big family with strong morals, conservative Christian background, and I think I was raised well, and I think I treat women well. But I would say I definitely have been guilty of like ghosting people, you know that term?
Yeah.
You just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, with girls you experience that too, though, not with guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like
girlfriends.
That's something that is regrettable to me in like thinking back on the way I've treated people a little bit is, you know, maybe forming an intimate bond with somebody and then ghosting on them. Like that's kind of rude. But it's the easiest thing to do in that circumstance.
Yeah.
And that becomes easy, and kind of once you do it a few times, like, oh, I can get away with this. And you feel like you can get away with something scot-free almost, but it's not, like it's hurting someone else. And I do recognize that.
That's
and
beautiful that you can see it now.
Oh, that's hopefully.
Well, some people never
that's true.
reflect about it, so.
And I hope that's not just like a Canadian trait that
No,
guys are doing all the time. Maybe it's just a guy trait all over.
No,
I think it's not really a gender specific thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more of just a selfish / ignorant thing, and then maybe it just
comfort
takes
as well.
I think it just takes that person to maybe experience that behavior on the other end of the stick, and then maybe that sometimes changes their perspective. I mean, I know in my own experience, it's when I experience something that's hurtful to me that then I reflect upon when I've been that way to someone else, and that's usually when I feel the remorse, is when I feel it myself, right?
Do you think are women treated the same, worse, or better here in Canada compared to Germany?
That's a very interesting question, Cody. I find, so I'm not going to say all the women here, but most of the women I met, there's exceptions, are defensive. Like, and they overcompensate. Like, they're scared of men and of being dominated, but they overdo it in being, I don't know, passive aggressive or playing games. And guys do that too, but now if we talk about girls, they are not treated worse than the German women, but girls in Germany are softer, and I don't know, I feel here in North America it's very like the guys front and the girls front, and then there's some who cross the border and stick together, but yeah, some relationships are still like these power games.
Okay.
Where it's not a real coming together and like
do you
serving
think
each other.
Is that lack of communication?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I started this show, because I feel there's a lack of communication. Big times, yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like we work on our communication quite a bit. That's like I think we have pretty good communication, and that's what makes our relationship successful. We were just talking today a little bit about I feel like a lot of times women should treat men like they're dumb, in the sense that don't think that they know what you are thinking, or that they should know that they should have to do something for you. Even like it would be nice if a guy would like think ahead, and he should kind of know how you're feeling and like predict things. And I like to think that I am fairly intuitive, and I do try to do that, but it's easy to just assume that people should know what you're thinking. And I think that's really kind of setting each other up for failure a little bit, because no one can know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
If you don't express yourself and say what you want and say what you need,
yeah,
you're never really going to get it.
Yeah.
So you need to like be vocal. And I do think like that within Canada, like it's my fear that we're maybe becoming a little too passive and polite, and that
Oh,
that, you know, on the world stage, you look at Justin Trudeau's like international presence, he's always apologizing. And it's not, I mean, like, there are things that maybe Canada should apologize for, but that seems to me like that's almost kind of what our identity is becoming. Is the people that, you know, everybody makes fun of in Canada, sorry. And our Prime Minister's always apologizing, and like this kind of soft culture of appeasement.
Yeah.
They're like always trying to appease. And if you don't communicate and say what you want and state what you want, you're never going to get it.
Oh, and what I also find is expressing emotion. So not only communicating with words,
I thought Germans didn't have feelings.
Oh my God, we're so emotional. Like, not as emotional as French or Italian people, but
you think Canadians are emotional?
No.
Or are not emotional?
No, like when it comes to anger, or when it comes to sadness or fear, then it shifts right away into aggression and defensiveness, or you suppress it. Yeah. And then you become depressed. And
I mean,
so
I'm a bottler. I know all about that.
Yeah.
Bottling. Do you agree? Do you think?
That you're a bottler?
No, not me necessarily, but that it tends to be just like a cultural thing that we are a little colder and don't deal with our emotions.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely how we've been raised too, right? Like, and I mean, I feel like Australians express their feelings a little bit more than Canadians, but like we're as well still, like you're sort of, like I remember like, you know, growing up and like when you cry and then you sort of get in trouble for crying and it's like, why are you being a baby? Like, stop being a little girl. It's like, well, I am a little girl. Right? Yeah, so it's like, I think, and I don't have enough experience with other cultures, but I just know from Australian and Canadian, from what I've observed, is your emotions and crying is viewed as weakness, but it's not necessarily weakness. It's just a form of expressing yourself. But I think it's really important to not also then get too consumed by those emotions and those feelings. It's good to cry and release, or like get out what you need to say, but then
don't use it as a manipulation.
Yeah, exactly. Don't use it as a tool to manipulate or just self-loathe, because that's not healthy either, right?
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
So, yeah.
Well, it's. I would never think of Canadians as people who don't show their feelings. So it is interesting for me to hear that. So I think we're almost too emotional. So.
I think well, I think when you know people on a personal level, I feel like they open up more. I think they're just better at keeping a kind of a neutral sort of a position in general. Like. You know what I mean? Like, I don't find Canadians, generally speaking, I don't find them super aggressive or...
like, I would say Australians are more aggressive than Canadians.
Yeah.
The Australia banters. They like to tease each other. And it's interesting. I listened to a little discussion today about bantering and teasing and how that can create bonds. And
can you explain bantering?
Bantering?
Like teasing, like poking fun, like.
So for her to insult me and then me to insult her back,
playfully.
But we're doing it for fun. So we're insulting each other for the fun of it. When we're not getting offended by it, we're just playing. Yeah. But we're trying to one up each other to
well, it's a sign of comfort, no? You don't do that with a total stranger. You do that with someone you like.
So me, I don't do that. I don't like to banter. Okay. I didn't like it in sports. I don't like it really between friends. Like, I don't want my friends to say mean things about me. Even if it is playing. Like, no, don't say mean things. You're my friend. Like, I want you to have my back. Yeah. I don't want you to criticize me. Yeah. And so our friend Greg, who's British, and Sarah have a bit of a different relationship because they enjoy the banter. And a lot of Sarah's friends, like, they enjoy the friendly banter. Yeah. And I know, like, particularly my group of friends, we don't do that. Yeah. We don't talk aggressively towards each other. No. We're nice to each other. We're aggressive. We kickbox. We fight. We're aggressive people. Yeah. But not in our language and our interactions with each other. Oh. We don't like the bantering.
It's huge in Germany.
Bantering as well.
Oh my god, yeah.
Lots of
Especially
teasing.
among guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I know a couple of people in Germany, and yeah, every friends group it's all about this. That's how they relate to each other and keep each other in check. And yeah,
I think in Australia, I would say more so amongst guys, but the bantering is almost a way to suppress how they're actually feeling. It's a
Is it
form.
suppressing or is it letting it out? Because you are.
no, I find it
Well, it's not.
suppressing.
I don't think it's an honest expression of how they're actually feeling.
Yeah.
Like they'll like playfully poke and say things that they actually kind of mean, but they're doing it in like a, oh, I'm just kidding, but really this is what I'm actually saying to you.
Kidding but not kidding.
Kinda. I don't know. It depends on the context, but I do think that it's, or because guys don't want to show that they're upset, so they'll be like, wow, like, yeah, well, you pussy, blah blah blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a. Yeah.
It's masking.
It's trying to mask how they're actually feeling. Like, they don't want to seem weak by, like, not being aggressive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think you're not weak if you can not be aggressive. Yeah, some double negatives.
Too many. No, but I agree. Yeah, if you are comfortable with yourself, then you don't need to be aggressive. You just sit there and be authentic. Yeah.
Okay, so what I listened to today on this discussion, they related it back to dogs. So like, dogs will wrestle with each other and like play fight, and that is, it's play. It's allowing them to test themselves, to use their abilities without getting hurt. So when they come to a situation when they do need to be aggressive, they've practiced.
Yeah.
And so if people who banter and kind of like insult each other, are they more thick-skinned, quick-witted, and like confident on their feet, rather than someone who maybe like myself, who almost takes offense too quickly? Do you think it like?
I think it's almost, once again, perspective, but like just going back onto like people that are more likely to banter, like from my own experience, is like maybe they don't feel comfortable sitting down and having like a heart-to-heart conversation and telling them straight out, like, hey, I don't think you should do this because, or I feel that the way that you're, like, this is inappropriate. It's like they'll sort of banter and be like, oh yeah, well, what, you like sort of like sass you about it a little bit in a playful way. So it's an easier way to talk about something that maybe they don't feel confident, like telling you how they actually feel. Does that answer your question?
I would say that if you have a if all of your relationships are only about bantering, if that's how you connect with people, like 90% of the time, then you are definitely not ready to pick a real fight. But if it's really playful, but with that same person, you know, you can also sit down and pour your heart out and say, today was really like tough on me.
Well,
then it's okay.
That's a good point, because I wonder if your friendship is always being critical and like kind of always attacking each other, are you as likely then to lay your heart open when you do have a problem, or would you in that situation be afraid that they're going to make fun of me because that's what we do to each other, so I'm not going to bring up something that's personal and that might hurt me because you're afraid that it will be made fun of?
Once again, I was going to say, once again, it's contextual. Like let's use our friend as an example. Like, I can sit down and have a heart-to-heart with him, but then there's other things that like I still want to say to him, but I'll poke it in a playful, like, bantering manner. But if it's like serious, like, I can still sit down and like.
Should good friends be critical of each other?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's kind of a role of a good friend, to let your friend know when they're out of line, when they're doing something inappropriate.
It's a way of helping your friend grow, no?
Well, it's on a lesser scale, like a deep, like a more shallow. But think of, like, you know, if you've got a friend that's got like a piece of like spinach in their teeth,
I tell it.
You want to tell them right away, right?
Right
away. Are you nervous to tell them?
No.
No.
I help them.
I want to, but
I
I'm so embarrassed.
I don't know if this is a Canadian thing or a Cody thing, where like I'm like, I'll see it and I'll want to say something, but at the same time I don't want to embarrass you, so I also don't want to tell you.
But is that like someone that you know, or is that
you?
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to embarrass you by telling you there's something in your mouth, but I want to tell you so that you don't get embarrassed.
Well, you should
and so
tell
it
me.
will weigh out, and I will tell you. But I would think about not wanting to tell you because I wouldn't want to embarrass you.
Yeah.
It's a funny.
I might think about that with someone that I don't know, but I'll usually just tell them because I know what it's like for me. Like, you know that you've eaten your salad at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then you go home at 8 o'clock and it's still in your teeth, and you're like,
that's the
Yeah.
especially when you know you've interacted with your friends, and you're like, why didn't they tell me?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you think that your Canadian friends are less likely to tell you when you're misbehaving?
I picked really good people, and they picked me, and so far, no. They've been really honest and upfront, and I was able to be honest and upfront with them too. So,
I sometimes fear with more liberalism. I would say I'm fairly liberal in a lot of ways, and kind of the live and let live attitude of don't bother me if I'm not bothering you kind of thing can open into someone's like misbehaving in a way that I don't really appreciate how you're behaving, but it's not really affecting me, so I'm gonna just not say anything. I fear sometimes that like our society is getting a little too accepting of everything. Like everything's cool, kind of like, okay, that's your experience, that's you do you. I don't like it, but you do you, and I'm not gonna say, hey man, you're like acting inappropriately. I don't think anybody likes you right now because of your actions.
that is funny, as you say, because I have experienced that differently. That, for instance, if you have like, I'm not throwing house parties, but if you do something a little different than the Canadian culture, right away people come and say, "Oh, you did this like differently, and you should do." So I don't experience what you experience.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
And maybe it's because I have an accent. I don't know. But people definitely point out when something is like off their expectation. So
interesting. Different experiences.
yeah. What about you?
I feel like once again, it's definitely like around the group of people that I am around. I feel like for the most part, people when I first meet them maybe are less confrontational. They won't generally like argue with me or tell me if they think that I'm wrong for the most part. But once they get to know me and they know that I actually like honest sort of opinions, like I feel like people, and I just think that's just general relationships. When people start to feel more comfortable with other people, then they're a little bit more honest about what they think, right? What their opinion is.
Do you think so? The better friends you are with someone, the more likely you are to tell them something you don't like about what they're doing, or do you get more comfortable with them and say,
That's just how they are.
That's just how they are, and I'll let them be that way.
Well, in my experience, I don't know, maybe people aren't like this to me, but I'll generally tell someone if I don't. Depends on what it is, but and how I feel if I think they're ignorant to something that I think that they would benefit from me telling them, or maybe they're not aware that they're acting a certain way that's inappropriate, then I'll say something. And then if they still disagree and they're like strong in what they believe in, then it's kind of like, well, okay, that's their opinion, they're entitled to it. And I think I feel like a lot of Canadians share that attitude as I do. Like
Is everyone entitled to their opinion?
I think everyone is entitled to their opinion, yeah.
What if their opinion's bad?
What is a bad opinion?
Yeah. An opinion is just what someone believes, right?
What if they're racist? What if that is their opinion?
Oh, okay.
What if they're serious about racist views? That's their opinion. Is it okay to just let them have their opinion, or do you? What social responsibility do we have to pull people up on their behavior?
As a German, full.
Yeah.
Like, it starts in kindergarten, and if you see something, you have to say something. Yeah, it sounds super cliche, but I was raised, and like at school, you learn to think critically and to speak up when something weird is going on,
Yeah.
and when it comes to racism, like don't let this slip through, because it can be something serious.
Okay, what about someone who's just being really rude?
That's the same thing.
Do you just let it slide because you don't want to like be awkward in public, or in a public place if someone's being rude, is there a social responsibility to like say something?
I definitely think it's appropriate to, like, you're entitled to speak up and say if you don't agree with how they're behaving. And I think it really, once again, it depends on, someone can have an opinion about something, but let's use the racism thing. You know that someone sitting there is racist, but they're not treating someone who they have a distaste for next to them inappropriately. If just they're letting them do their own business, but you know that they have that opinion, but they're not actually placing that opinion on that person. They're entitled to that opinion, as long as they're not, in my opinion, as long as they're not passing judgment or trying to change other people's opinion. I think everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but it's how in which they act on it. Does that make sense? I think there are
certainly people who hold opinions that they know are not popular, that they know aren't really acceptable. That might be the way that they think, but like you said, if in public they act appropriately to social norms, and so they don't act out being a racist. They might still have those thoughts. They might still feel that way.
Or have the online friends who share the same thing.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
But if that's their outlet and they're expressing their gross opinions there and not in real time on the streets to people, that's better than nothing, I guess. I mean, there are all sorts of people with rather strange opinions about things, stranger than we can think of.
Yeah.
And it's tough. The social responsibility to kind of like police social spaces is definitely.
Well, I mean, racism is a very important topic, and you have to. That's when you have to kind of step in and try to, I don't know, do something. Like when it comes to, like in public, someone speaking his mind against.
In that.
But when it comes to, for instance, a person who thinks, the Earth is flat and the moon has absolutely no influence on planet Earth, then I'm like, wow, this is like super interesting, and I want to see how your brain works, functions, But when it comes to racism, it's really like a red flag, I find. And but then when you say, if I would see someone say something or do something racist, I would, as a woman, always be careful, and I would have to know that there's someone with me before I say something, because I'd be scared.
I definitely, and I have in the past said stuff when I think things are inappropriate. Like if someone will, that's what I was meaning. It's in context. I think people are entitled to their views, but if they're vocalizing these views and they're acting out on these views and they're putting down others around them, then that's when it's not okay. And that's when I think it is your social duty to point it out. Like, that's not okay what you're doing. Like, absolutely.
I think it's interesting, the power of numbers. And sometimes people are afraid, like you said, like you as a woman might not want to confront a man right away if you didn't know that there's like people backing you up. But I wonder, like, if you were to say something in a crowded place, I would hope that most people would like pay attention and be like, oh, okay, there's something happening here, you're upset about it, what's going on? And if someone is acting inappropriately, that the group would kind of like turn on them and would support you. And I mean, that's not going to always happen.
You pick and choose your battles, essentially.
Yeah.
But
I would always try to empower the weak party, the victim, and that part, instead of attacking the person who is like, pardon?
Instead of attacking the person who's being attacked?
No, who is attacking. So I would team up with the victim instead of attacking the attacker. that's what I would always do. And if I know I have someone who would back me up, then I would go and say something.
I wouldn't necessarily attack the attacker, but I would just say I don't agree with what you just said. And like I think even just straight out saying that, like, and I have done that before in like bar situations when I'm like serving, and like my regulars will say things to me that I'm like, that's not okay. And if you're just like super blunt and you shut them down like that, it's kind of like,
that's true,
right? Like you don't have to be aggressive, but you can shut them down just by being.
I have to learn
straight to the point.
I have to learn it. Yeah.
The power of words.
Yeah. Oh, and then not only power of words, but how you.
You also have to be very confident. Like you don't have to be aggressive, but you assertive. Like just being assertive and confident is important. Yeah.
Being assertive is tricky. I struggle with it a little bit. Definitely don't negotiate for myself that well. I'm quite a pleasant person most of the time, and I find it hard to be disagreeable. And sometimes you need to be disagreeable to really kind of negotiate for yourself.
That's
get
true.
the best thing for yourself.
Yeah.
Find it difficult.
Yeah. I think we are in overtime already. But it was amazing. Like, is there some major thing we didn't address that you still would like to talk about? Or?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to get through today.
Yeah, and you come back whenever you want.
Awesome.
And we'll keep talking. You too. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And you watched the Borealis show on Friday night here. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week again. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.